Hey folks, we survived another week. How are we all?
Hello, buddy. How are you? Yeah, just about, we're hanging on by our fingernails here, I think. But
It's just wild, isn't it? No, it's going well,
lovely.
mate. You know, we, to be honest, the more I look at things, I'm not quite as doom and gloomy out there. But there's obviously still a lot of work to do. But I'm not. It's not the worst thing I've seen. I thought we'd be lower considering all things, and it sounds like, at least in the rumor mill, that things like DCG are going to find a deal. So I think the vast majority of this storm has passed, and probably just duration and stuff that sits in front of us.
I haven't seen anything about the DCG deal. Is that what
I
have you
didn't I
seen
didn't
then?
see anything concrete, but I did see a bunch of people who were like, it's so. I mean, look, it's hard to tell in this industry, and people are being pretty opaque about it all. But I saw a couple of folks mentioning couple of pieces of logic that I read. I can't actually remember what they were. It's too early in the morning for that. But they sounded pretty reasonable. Basically just logic behind, like, they had deadlines and stuff on Wednesday, and um, you know the fact that they haven't reported anything isn't actually necessarily a bad thing. I can't remember what I saw, but I saw some at least discussion about the fact that it's highly likely that they found some kind of a deal. Otherwise, they would have had to formally issue some kind of statement by this point in time, or bankruptcy, or whatever it was for Genesis.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Because I, I I just sort of keep seeing the opposite, as in like where the more people sort of, they recently didn't they sort of disclose that is about, was it 2.8 billion now that's sort of missing from Genesis or between the
That
DCG
was their
group.
total haul, yeah.
Yeah, which basically, I mean, the more people have been digging into it, for what I've been seeing, is like it just seems like Barry's been, the group has been doing pretty much what SBF has been doing. Just they blew up when Three Arrows blew up, and so they've been borrowing money and moving it left, right, and center, loaning it between companies. To just keep it afloat and doing what I don't know. I'm not very qualified in law and all that, but a lot of people who are sort of quoting that it's not sort of legit. That so at the expense of sort of keeping Genesis afloat after it crashed, that they might have been doing some dodgy, some not so good stuff behind the scenes. Maybe is what people's opinions are. I'm not, that's what I've been seeing, but I'm not
No, I
like.
mean, sorry, I think that for at least from my perspective, obviously the what was it, like 1 or 1.3 billion that they had to cover from Genesis and Three Arrows. So that's definitely a fuck up. But I definitely don't see, what I'm seeing, at least, is I don't see fraud in this particular instance. I just see classic lending behavior, as you see in Wall Street. I don't particularly see anything too, I guess, malfeasant about what's going on with DCG. I think it honestly, I think this is just a reality check on this is how the world of business works. It's run on debt, right? We have a debt based system, and it's pretty hard to start up a company without it. So I'm not necessarily in the camp where I see too much. In fact, I don't think I see any malfeasance. I think for the most part, what I basically see is just hard economic times, right? You got tighter money, and a couple of your borrowers blew up, and that kind of blows a hole in the lender's balance sheet. And again, it kind of shows you just how much of a real time bomb that Luna was, right? Luna really started all of this chaos. Obviously, all this debt was going to build up and flush out eventually, but I think the difference with Luna is that it went to zero. Most of the time, things don't go to zero, right? They go to just much cheaper. This thing went to actual zero and just took everyone out along the way, and it did so instantaneously, right? Which amazingly FTX did as well. So I think that was really the crux of it. It was just the pace and the speed at which Luna went from hero to zero. That it shocked a lot of people. It prevented people from making moves. And I think the 1.3 billion in from Genesis. I mean, it's not good that they lent that money to Three Arrows unsecured, but they did. That's a problem. All of the other pockets of debt, if I recall correctly, there's a 300 million and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars here, but for the most part, to me, they just appear to be your traditional loan book that, during times of extreme stress, I don't think it's any different to what Wall Street does.
Interesting. No, I mean, I don't know if you're just more generous than I am or whatever, but I just it gives me, I think it sort of reeks of dishonesty when they sort of they come out and say, oh, we got no exposure to FTX, and then the next day it's, oh, we got 7 million exposure, and then the next day, oh, well, that's not actually 7, it's 175 million. Oh, well, now we're 1 billion in short. Oh, well, actually now there's we forgot to mention there's a promissory note of another 1 point odd billion or whatever. Oh, now it's 2.8 billion. I mean, it just seems like there's not a lot of good practices going on behind the scenes there. Do you mean if they come out and just said right from the beginning clearly what it was, I'd have more faith of them going forward. But I think I don't know. We'll see, obviously, but it is maybe better news than good news for not hearing anything. But I think there's a lot more dirt behind the surface that is not being revealed as yet, and we'll see what comes up. But maybe no news is good news.
No, it's possible. And look, the reality is that I don't think no news is good news. I think it's not good that they're not kind of sharing. You saw the whole thing with Grayscale, right? Where they're like, oh yeah, no, we can't share the Grayscale wallets for security reasons or whatever. It's like, oh come on, please, just share the fucking wallets. Like, come on, let's not be stupid about this whole thing. There's absolutely no reason that they shouldn't be sharing. Now, I do believe that GBTC is going to be fully backed. I don't think that there's anything missing from behind there. I would be extraordinarily surprised if Coinbase doesn't have the coins that they hold. Now, with that said, the other thing that's just absolutely wild, and I've been yet to reconcile it. A lot of you've seen basically every data provider, but Glassnode as well. The exchange balances, that kind of stair-stepping down pattern for Coinbase. So that, as far as we can tell, is very real, right? That is the exchange balance for Coinbase. But on Coinbase's public filings, remember that Coinbase is a company that has many arms and legs, right? Their exchange business is one part of that. Now, those stair-steppings, we've postulated for a long time. What's basically going on behind the surface there is that those coins are being withdrawn from Coinbase Exchange, meaning they do not fit Coinbase Exchange heuristics anymore. There is no way to deduce that those coins are not a withdrawal. But what they appear to be is going into some kind of institutional custody. So they've got 560 or something thousand BTC based on those heuristics, but their public filing says they have 2 million BTC. 2 million. Just an enormous sum. Now that goes to show you how much of those coins, and of that 2 million, 560,000 is the exchange, and then you've got another 600 and whatever it is, 30,000, which are the GBTC coins. So Coinbase has them, but they're in a different set of wallet heuristics that are basically what we see is that coins get withdrawn, they go into a wallet that's like a multi-sig, and then they just never move again. So you can't discern that that's a Coinbase cluster because it never interacts with anything else after it's been withdrawn. So it's, how you actually can't discern that between a hodler and a Coinbase custody transaction. So they have, based on their public filings, 2 million BTC. Now, I would be extremely surprised if Coinbase is lying about that as a publicly traded US company. That would shock me. So I think they have the 2 million coins, but it just goes to show how challenging it is. I mean, that when they won't release the GBTC wallets, well, you should be able to, because in theory they've been withdrawn and put into a multi-sig wallet that just basically hasn't moved ever since. So you really should be able to share those wallets with no security concern. Like, why would you have a security concern in that instance? But anyway, look, it's certainly a very odd and strange thing. But again, I agree. I think it's I think no news is probably not the best news. from DCG and the like. I don't think Grayscale is paper Bitcoin. I think they do have the BTC. I think the discounts probably going to continue to widen, but again, it's a bit of a cash cow. I think there's maybe it was Ryan Selkis, actually, now I think about it, that posted up a thread about why he reckons DCG is going to be fine. And he's a pretty close insider. He knows how these pieces work. I think it would essentially be a huge missed opportunity for anybody to come in and actually just take a huge chunk of that pie and basically recollateralize the business, because I think it's going to make money for a very long time. Obviously assuming it doesn't blow up, but I think it would be an opportune investment opportunity for many of the folks on Wall Street who, even though it's a bit toxic at the moment, there are guys out there who can look through the shit and make hard decisions when they need to and make money off the back of it.
Yeah, I saw that one by Ryan Selkis. Do you mean? But I think he's sort of separating. People are sort of separating Grayscale being quite profitable, and they're sort of. I don't understand it all, to be honest. But they're making money from their. They've got years of worth of custody, or 2%, whatever they're charging people and stuff. And then you've got the Genesis, which is obviously lost a lot of money. And I think the thing at the moment is, DCG even wanted to cut it free, let that go under and try and keep the DCG label going strong. Do you mean? I was, and obviously he put forward some thing which I didn't completely understand. It's too technical for me for why he thinks that, Ryan thinks that it could all be saved and, both Genesis and DCG could continue. And then I was on another Twitter Spaces, and some guy who's a legal guy was, saying completely opposite, basically, and just sort of like the letter that he sent, that Barry had sent out to the shareholders, or the day before, his interpretation was basically they were getting ready to sort of cut that free and trying to lay the ground that don't worry, DCG is a good, good company, and so obviously we're going to get tarnished. It's going to hit the reputation, but have faith in us that this is we've got a good brand here that we can keep going. Because he was saying like all the bullshit that he was sort of saying. Oh, thank you for everyone who's tried to, wants to do a funding round for DCG. We'll let you know if we want the money or not. And he just said that's just rubbish. They're just like, it's just trying to make out to the investors that they've got to fluff up his own product, basically. Do you mean? It's like because they could have quite easily have sort of sold this for a funding round if they wanted to. Do you mean? But I don't know. It just all stinks to high heaven, and what we've seen the last week with FTX and then even that was quite an interesting one with Corey Clipstein with Preston. I mean, he goes into detail of a lot of calling out lots of scams all over Silicon Valley and all these VC pumpers, and from listening to them, it just seems like there is a lot of stuff that is behind the scenes that people have been getting away with, and just pushing, doing what like SBF does, or maybe what DCG has, is like blending between the two of them to, maybe there is a bit of it wouldn't surprise me if there was paper Bitcoin on GBTC. I mean, otherwise, I agree with you entirely. Why would they not just put that to easy to rest of just showing what is properly there? But we'll see. It's very interesting, and I think there's a lot of more dirt. There's a lot of dirt underneath the surface, Jermaine, but it's all CeFi stuff. This is what I don't get. I mean, it's like to me, it doesn't tarnish or ruin my faith in Bitcoin or DeFi or anything. It's just this is purely CeFi, people doing bad businesses, paying off politicians and regulators, and just scamming people and getting away with it. Do you know what I mean? This is just human greed. This has nothing to do with crypto. It could have been done in banks if banking was the same, and they didn't want to put out proper rules, and there's lots of grayness around. People will be doing it the same. This is just nothing to do with crypto or Bitcoin as such. It's just human greed.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's kind of isolated to and I think it's just important to just make a distinction here. I don't believe, at least in my view, I don't think that we should compare DCG to SBF because SBF was blatant, outright criminal fraud. I think what we're seeing with DCG is an unfortunate side of leverage, right? So I think that it is important to get those two things separated. 3 Arrows Capital, for example, was outright fraud, right? That was literally lying to investors. I don't think GBTC is paper because Barry Silbert having paper Bitcoin and going against his prospectus that is in the United States is jail time. That's prison. I just don't believe that that's like the long dick of the American law. I don't think that that would be not in anybody's best interest. So I'd be very surprised if Coinbase was in on it. I'd be very surprised if, for GBTC to be paper, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen because you've now got a situation where you've got Coinbase is in on the scam, GBTC is in on the scam, Grayscale. They've got publicly traded and the scale of how bad that is, if that came out to be true, is just horrific, absolutely horrific. It would, that I would be very, very surprised if two publicly traded companies were scamming the American public. I would just be extraordinarily surprised. I don't think, what's his name? I don't think Brian Armstrong gets paid enough to cover that level of mess with his business on the line. I just don't believe that's the case. Anyway, that's my take on things. I think that's the point of why I know that, regulated companies can be scams too, but that's the point of why these regulations exist. Is that the incentive against doing that is just it's extraordinary because it's everything, right? It's the rest of your life in prison. When you're doing the offshore thing, whole different ballgame. So I do think it's important to just highlight that SBF and 3 Arrows are a different animal when it comes to the level of scam perpetuated because it's actual just straight up fraud. I think these other guys basically got caught in the fire of being over leveraged, lending to the wrong people, and dealing with things that we deal with every 10 years or 8 years or seemingly 2 years now on a traditional finance perspective. But there is no question that it's traditional finance that's essentially the problem here. It is all the centralized lenders and all the centralized exchanges that are causing grief. I'm certainly, I've reassessed a huge portion, as I always do, reassessed what's going on out there and just tried to project forward what I think is going to happen. I'm kind of the opinion now where I sold all of my Ethereum the other week. I'm out. I will never buy it again. It's over. I basically am pretty much Bitcoin only at this point in time. And really, that was kind of the last straw. That was the. I just believe that what we're seeing Ethereum build out. You probably saw there was some tweets on Twitter recently about how MetaMask and Infura is now tracking IP addresses, and Uniswap's looking into bringing in KYC, and it's the whole thing. I just see a absolute shitstorm of regulation coming. I see CBDCs being built by these entities. I think the VCs are all completely captured. I think it's going to get pretty Orwellian pretty quickly. So I'm pretty much fully out of anything that's not BTC at this point. I've still got some Monero in my stacks, and a bit of DCR, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much my entire portfolio in this industry now, and I don't particularly see a great deal of motivation for changing that at this point. So I'm definitely concerned about the regulatory backlash for crypto, so to speak. I'm pretty tired of the amount of VC funded scams and the multi-coin capitals, and as much as Corey can be a bit of a knob, he did a good job on this particular podcast. He basically highlights just how painful it is to go through and look at the scammery that goes on in this industry. So, to me, voting with my feet is basically selling everything that isn't a scam, right? Get out of everything that's a scam, and just hold the vote with your wallet, so to speak. So that's at least my view. I think that the crypto space is going to have to go down a path of heavy regulation, which essentially devalues its value prop completely. and I just don't believe it's the CBDC future that any of us should really want. So voting against it to me is the only right decision. But anyway, it's a bit of a shit show, and we'll see how it plays out. But I suspect that politicians and regulators will, they'll almost try and one up themselves to kick the beehive when it's down and get brownie points, and there'll be more and more constituents that actually want some kind of, put the foot down on them, put the boot down. But yeah, I'd be very surprised if they didn't come in with a semi-heavy hand.
Yeah, I mean, you could even think it might have all been planned, can't you? Do you mean it's definitely? I think the regulation's coming on the way, and I think you're doing the safest thing. I think BTC or a few products that are, confirmed that they've not been sort of selling in the US and stuff is the best option. Do you mean? But I think you're definitely doing the right move. It makes the most sense. Do you mean? And I think it hasn't tarnished my thoughts on Bitcoin at all. But and I just makes it stronger. Do you mean? So I think you're doing the right thing there. But it's definitely been interesting. This SBF character I keep seeing in the papers, and he seems like a white knight. He's such a good guy. I mean, he's such an altruistic guy. They seem to love him on New York Times and all these other all these big sort of Washington Post or wherever. All these papers that seem to be writing up such great things about him. And hasn't that sort of made you sort of maybe look at the darker side of what's really, really going on back here with everything?
Oh, absolutely. No, without a question. I mean, there's kind of two interpretations here, and more people are moving back towards I think the side that you and I are on. There's kind of two interpretations of the whole SBF thing. There's the most kind of Occam's razor version, which is that essentially it's a bunch of inexperienced young idiots that just kind of blew something up much bigger, came from privileged families, had the capital get it started. There's kind of that angle. It just got out of hand. They made series of bad decisions, and the whole thing just basically imploded. And fleet of the moment, they decided that using customer deposits, don't worry, we can win it all back in one trade, and blew everything up. So that's kind of the Occam's razor, right? And that's what if you read any of these, I mean, I haven't read any of the bloody articles. I couldn't be fucked. But all these New York Times pieces that basically just blow him up as a philanthropist, and he was donating all of his money and he's doing all these good things. Like, okay, there's also a level of like maybe the media is just dumb, right? They just don't look into these things. Then there's the other angle, which is increasingly probable in my view, and probably in your view too. The inability for them to say the words fraud or stole customer deposits or goddamn thief or put the fucker in prison, the inability for the media to say any of those things, and in fact to have him still speaking at a New York Times conference in a week's time. And then you look at the way that they write about Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, or Jesse Powell from Kraken, or any other component of this industry, where it's scathing. They hate it. They want to send it to zero. It's a scam. It's all like, you're telling me that you're calling legitimate founders in this industry. The disparity is just, it's insane. Legitimate founders get thrown under the bus and called an absolute crook and a scammer. And then an actual guy who stole $10 billion of customer deposits to bail out a fraudulent enterprise and embarrassed the Democrats and embarrassed like everyone is still having puff pieces written about him in the biggest media in the world. And also happens to have all these ties back to Gensler, and his parents are in the elite inner circles and blah, blah, blah. The only piece of that puzzle that I can't work out, to be honest, is why they used him. So, I guess to kind of bring that back a level, he's obviously got well-connected parents, right? They're in university circles, and, his father was Gary Gensler's boss, or who knows, some shit like that. Anyway, the point is, why would they use the son of somebody who's important to blow this thing up. Not sure. Because he's the only one who can get the meetings, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, the how he kind of got there, why he was chosen to be put there, all those questions I don't really have a good answer for. However, taking the 50,000 foot view, it's kind of weird, man. It's kind of weird that this dude is still having, endearing pieces written about him, despite what he did, and in contrast to literally everything else. I mean, they'll gladly throw CZ under the bus. CZ is the public enemy number one, if you read the media, right? They hate him. But he's a pretty legitimate operator, right? You can dislike CZ if you want, but you can't, I mean, the guy is amazing. It's incredible to watch him operate, really is. It's just one of the greatest businessmen of all time. I mean, the way that he just has avoided regulatory capture and built up just an extraordinary business. I mean, he's not one of the most rich people in the world in a couple of years, like in the top 3 or top 1. I'll eat my hat. So it's a pretty remarkable, I guess, divergence between what you typically see about this industry relative to what you're seeing about SBF. So, look, I'm definitely leaning more and closer towards it probably is a bit of a Fed setup or a plant, or at the very least, the SBF enterprise and its collapse was probably helped by the actors who are currently writing puff pieces about him. Anyway, it could also be that that's just what you get for several $1 million donated to the media. I don't know. But, in either way, it's certainly, it stinks. It stinks a lot, and it seemingly refuses to stink less. So that's at least my take on things.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And well, firstly, I agree with you completely about ZZ. He's looking fantastic in this. And, when he speaks, and he's like, he says all the right things of like, we were never, he might have seen us as.
He's like, I love that he basically says to Sam, "Is like, you're so irrelevant that it doesn't affect my day-to-day decision making."
Yeah, and he was like saying basically, if he spent all his time trying to capture FTX because they got so much overlap of customers, they might just benefit by 1%. But he was saying like, if we get the whole industry to go full, we can double the size of this industry. We could triple it. We could all make lots more money. So he's got completely the right attitude. So I like him. And he's done great. But I mean, I'm loving all these puff pieces about SBF because it's just waking everyone up. Do you mean this is what I've over the last 2-3 years, very quickly even I've been, as of all these so-called conspiracy theories and pretty much so far nearly everyone has come true. And obviously he was a Davos crowd boy, and they have lost the narrative so badly that they're now prepared to shoot themselves in the foot, and because they still believe that they have to protect their boy, their WFer, and they've lost the narrative so badly that they're prepared to just, in the face of millions of people who he's robbed or used his funds for trading, they still believe that they can bully people through, and just by putting through this false narrative that obviously was there way before it all started to come alive with vaccines and lockdowns and all this. Do you know what I mean? So and just every week, more and more people are just seeing it for what it is, the corruption of he was a Democrat boy, he was a WEFer, and Davos Crowder, and they're losing the narrative big time. Do you know what I mean? And it's interesting. Someone obviously threw him under the bus, and if you listen to Tom anyway, he thinks it's the other side of the people, the Fedders, who actually threw him under the bus. And they're still pro Bitcoin, they're pro decentralization, they're pro crypto. Do you mean? So it still fits his narrative, and I just love it that it's become so. He's just onboarding so many people to see how corrupt and diabolical the system is. You know what I mean? And how much lies that they just keep pumping out. Exactly the same thing happened with Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, and they've woken up so many people with just what they're doing is just fantastic. Even look at Brazil, I don't believe in that election result either. If you look at Brasiliano, whatever his name is, there's how many Twitter followers he had, like millions, and the other guy had less than a million. Do you mean? And anyway, there's it's just coming very, very clear for people to see. People are opening up their eyes, which I think is a great thing. Because they just, they couldn't more better way. And thank God for Twitter. I mean, where would we be without Twitter if it was a closed down, propaganda machine like most of the mainstream media? Thank God for Elon buying that, and I'm sure he was backed by the people who want the truth to come out as well. Do you mean? I'm sure he's not spending 44 billion on his own for the good of humanity, but thank God he did. Do you mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. And even when you look at the FTX thing, you'd never know what happened if you read only mainstream media, right? You literally wouldn't understand what had happened. But Twitter, you found out as it was happening, which is pretty remarkable, right? When you actually think about it, it's quite amazing that we can essentially be our own media. And the kind of easy counter answer to that is like, isn't it full of all the misinformation? And it's like, yeah, there's heaps of misinformation. There's heaps of people who are just wrong. But at the same time, the media is like provably wrong. So like, which one is worse, right? These people are deliberately telling you the wrong thing because of their own incentives. Whereas at least Twitter, there's the raw incentive of give me clout, right? So people are going to go in there and actually do the forensic work. And when it comes to investigative journalism, the public is just vastly superior, right? We're just, for whatever reason, investigative journalism is just completely dead in the water in mainstream media. So, you end up in a result where you can have on-chain sleuths who go out there and actually find these things and discover what was going on long before the media has a single idea about what's happening. So, they probably do have an idea at the moment, but they refuse to talk about it, which is kind of remarkable. But no, we are in a new era, and I have to say that I don't know how Elon's going to turn the business around from a financial perspective. That I would sense that they're in some dire straits over there. However, I think he'll probably find a way, right? What have they done? They've sacked like 70% of people, and Twitter still seems to be ticking along, right? There's been no kind of signs. There's a bunch of people talking about it dying last week. I mean, here we are. Just keep the servers kind of ticking over, and who knows? Maybe one day it'll just be dead. But man, it really does change the game, and let's hope that he can really turn it around and kind of achieve the free speech platform. At least just allow the narratives. And again, I've certainly seen a very significant change in the discourse, right? I saw that documentary that was floating around the other day about how the vaccines probably didn't quite do what they were supposed to do, and that's absolutely something that would have got taken down 6 months ago. So to see it able to circulate, right, is good, right? Irrespective of what the content is, at least it's able to circulate, and people are then able to make their own decisions and have informed opinions.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, Twitter. You say, minute by minute, sort of, it's like a collective, everyone putting their heads together. Yeah, exactly. And it's like so exciting. I mean, it's quite addictive, sort of addictive in a good way of actually refreshingly getting, access to genuinely people's minds, people's thoughts, free speech. And when you look at the people who are against it and want to close it down or unhappy about Elon taking over, they're all the bad people that are shouting and screaming about it and crying their eyes out and getting upset and screaming. And it just shows you even more. It's just all of this is just making it all come around to change, get people to start critically thinking and seeing what really is going on behind the scenes. And thank God, yes. But I think as well, it's a good shape. I mean, I thought it's like 70 or 80 or 90% he's sacked the staff. It's still functioning really well. And is this a big wake-up call for Silicon Valley and tech that, there is a lot of waste in a lot of these jobs. And, they're just, if you've just sacked 90% of your staff or 80%, you're saving a lot of money. Do you mean? So,
Yeah.
I'm sure I've got no doubts he can make this work. I mean, bringing in this €8, dollar, whatever, if he does bring it in or anything, even if you want to pay $8 and get rid of no marketing or something like that, I'd pay that happily. Do you know what I mean? Just for the free speech, and I think loads of people would. So, if you got rid of more bots and stuff like that, I'm sure he'll find a way. But if you can run just as well, with a massive percentage of staff less, then your costs is hugely improved. So streamlining it, I think, is a big wake up call for Silicon Valley. So it's going to be very interesting how, the shares of all this tech stock stuff, as it's really, lots of it is, wastage, and they don't actually make a profit and stuff. So I think people will be looking at things much more carefully in the future going forward, shares in that sort of stuff.
Yeah, one thing I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit disappointed about is that we can't see the Twitter share price anymore, because that would tell you what the market thinks about the current decisions, right? Like, not having a price signal kind of shows you how important it is as information. You can actually use it to gauge what the market believes. So that's certainly something that I kind of recognized and identified, which I thought was quite interesting, right? That kind of first time that you identify that price is information. So, no, Dom, I have not forgotten that Elon is a scam artist. In fact, that's kind of why I'm a little bit hesitant about the whole thing. But, look, at the end of the day, I was having this conversation the other day. At least it's changed, so to speak, right? So it doesn't really matter who could own it. I don't know who else could own it, but at least it's different. At least it's now in a period of evolution, right? Let's hope it doesn't blow up, because it is an amazing resource. And again, $8, I don't pay it yet, but $8 is something that would absolutely not change anything for me. Like, it would be, it's peanuts really at the end of the day. And if that's what it took to keep the platform ticking over, then you multiply $8 across the Twitter user base, and you with a 2 or 3 or 5% conversion rate, that's a shitload of money. So, the path to monetization could actually be somewhat trivial in that sense. But also, I would suspect what he's doing is he's culling the fat, right? If you don't want to work for me, because there's a lot of people on Twitter that surely do not want to work for Elon. If you don't want to be here, here's your exit. And if you, and simultaneously doing an injection of cash. So if you can inject cash into the business and remove 90% of your wastage, that's a turnaround, if they can survive it. And that actually kind of brings on to, I think, probably another topic is just kind of the broader economic conditions. What's been quite interesting is I didn't even follow with all the shit that's been going on in this industry. I haven't paid a single iota of attention to the Fed. I'm pretty sure, if I can kind of glue together what's been going on, that there's a bit of dissent going on, where some of the Fed board directors are getting a little bit softer on things, or at least starting to talk about slowing down of rate hikes and things like that, which I think makes sense. And it's not just Twitter. There's lots of companies, there's lots of businesses that are doing layoffs, and it looks like things are slowing down at a pretty dramatic rate. And, at some point in time, the Fed's going to have to factor in economic slowdown. And they're also getting close to their terminal rate, I would suspect. When you look at the yield curve, it be inverted very, very quickly. We're starting to see inversions pretty much across the entirety of the curve. And even the shorter dated, I think the 3-month yields is basically saying somewhere between another 25 and 35 basis points is all the Fed's got room for. That's basically what the market's pricing in. So I think we're getting close to some kind of a change. I don't necessarily think that's going to mean that rates are going to start dropping, but I fear that the economic slowdown is going to be pretty damn nasty. And as a result, we'll see how quickly they can, or how much resolve they have to keep rates high in the face of what looks like a pretty dire situation. But I don't know. Have you been keeping more track on what the Fed speak has been about?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it on the head. Although I'm not. I really. I must admit, I've been, been sort of like, so time wise, been really sort of focused on the SBF and all that other sort of fallout stuff.
Isn't it
But
funny how the Fed just disappeared from internal speak?
yeah, I mean, it was pretty much clear, I think, from the last, my interpretation from the last Fed, raising by 75 and then coming out and saying that they were, they're going to go more terminal higher. Do you mean that there was going to be the next one would be lower, but they didn't want that to think that that means that they're stopping. They're just going to start to, because there's a bit of descent, keep it going, maybe 50s now, do you mean? And, the terminal rate will be high. And I think as far as the bond market is heading that way. I think, I haven't really looked at, they still think that it's going to be, they're believing they're taking the word for it. I don't know if things have changed. I haven't really looked at the bond market for that week, but
I mean, the 10-2 yield curve is at minus 76 basis points. It's the lowest it's ever been.
So yeah, I mean, a recession is on the way, I'm sure. Do you mean it's like whether it will be a soft landing or a hard landing, we've yet to see. But I mean, I probably imagine that close to 6 is where they're heading. Is what my thoughts are. So
no way. There's no chance. There's no chance they get another 2 basis points up.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's. I mean, I think I wouldn't surprise me. Do you mean?
There won't be a business. There won't be anyone in business. Like the mathematics on that. Huh?
The US seem to be doing very well and not imploding on the rate hikes. Everyone didn't think they could get to 2, let alone get to 4. Or do you mean? So
yeah, but you have to remember that these things take time to actually echo through the economy. It's not rate hike up equals result. The debt has to roll, and over the course, I think 30% of the debt's going to roll over the next 6 to 8 months. So you're going to see enormous increases in interest expense. Unemployment is starting to tick higher. Like I just don't think they're going to get to 6%. I think inflation will come down faster than that. Than the time it's going to take them to get to 6%. I think inflation will be below 6% by that point.
Yeah, I probably agree. I do still stick to what I've been saying for a while, that I don't think this is really about inflation, but it's all about made to think it's about inflation. But it's we will see. I think 6 is their target. But I do agree. There is the point that there's a lot of debt being rolled over in about 8-9 months. So I wouldn't be surprised if they keep going harder and faster. Like 50 to that point, so then they can sort of start to pull back when a lot of things are renewed. But yeah, I've no doubts that they could afford it for a year or more if needed. You mean short term, if it gets the job done with what's going on behind the scenes. So we'll see. But they're definitely, I think I'd expect 50 in December. Do you mean? So, but it's interesting. What do you think about the stock market? I don't think there's much more legs left in it really at this sort of level. I would start to think that are now sort of shifting from, the Fed pivot or expecting slowdown to sort of like recession is coming. And, I'd imagine if this is sort of a higher high, another lower high going on here, but and we'll see where it goes. But maybe it does blast on up. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that confused me, and there's 2 things that really confused me of late. One is that how the stock market isn't lower, and the other one is why gold isn't higher. Right, they're the kind of the two things that have confused me to no end over the course of the last 2 years. But stonks, I mean, I don't really have any inside baseball in them. I don't really spend much time looking at them. All I see is risk, to be perfectly honest. I truly don't understand how any of them are as high as they are. The other thing I just don't get is how you can have major names like, Amazon wiping out trillions of dollars and all these big assets just getting wiped out, and yet the indexes do not seem to go down. I just can't get my head around it. It's obviously got something to do with the weightings and which companies are actually imploding. But we're seeing some of the biggest companies in the world just shedding value, and these indices just don't seem to go down. It's kind of wild, but I don't really have too much inside baseball on the stonk front. I just I don't really get it. It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, it's kind of a strange world at the moment because the only things that really make sense to me is Bitcoin, gold, and oil, and all three of those are getting minced at the moment. So it's just a strange world. It's very very hard to read. I don't really know how that plays out, but I'd be very very surprised if in 6 months' time we're higher than where we currently are, unless they're in full print mode, which I just don't believe. And that's the other thing. I actually think that the full print, the focus on the Fed printing, it just gets overblown. It becomes this kind of self-reinforcing narrative, and I think that's where Bitcoin stands out. Is it's essentially a tool to have money outside this system, right? Which is really what gold was supposed to be for many many years, but I think too many people focus on, it will only go up when the Fed prints. It's like, well, it is also a fixed supply asset with a reliable base of demand. And, there's a whole bunch of reasons outside Fed liquidity for why people would want to own this thing, right? It's also infinitesimally small on the grand scheme of things. So, anyway, it's kind of a bit of a strange market. I really wouldn't be surprised, but at the same time, recession could just as equally mean just like everything to the moon. I mean, we live in a strange world where nothing really makes sense. And even though the games and the rules have changed, it takes time for the market to work that out. But it's just kind of surprising that it's working it out to the upside at the moment. It's just odd. But yeah, a lower high would make more sense than anything. But, it's just kind of bizarre, even at the best of times.
Yeah, I was going to say another point that I've been picking up in the last few days is that I think some of the rally in the stonks was caused by them thinking that China's going to open up and shut down they were coming to an end with their COVID policy, but it looks like they've been doubling down in the last few days. I think Beijing's gone back into lockdown, and they're saying that basically whatever happens in Beijing leads the rest of China. So I think it's Jim Bianco's who puts out lots of good posts about that.
They're in all cases, right?
Yeah, they're really sort of like going full Monty again with the same stuff. So I think that's gonna, I think the market will have sort of seen its peak there. That's my thoughts, but again, anything can happen. But I would have thought, sorry,
it's just a complete circus. Like
yeah.
The fact that China's still trying to do this COVID zero policy. If I understand why they do it, it's because they've basically made a point to their people that China's COVID policy is a success and the West was a failure. And the problem is that even if that's not the case, you can't just about face and keep that opinion. So it's basically a political position rather than than anything else. But it is truly wild that we're still dealing with this in the back end of 2022. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's really going on there. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's much to do with COVID. Really, do you mean a lot of dissent? Or I don't know what it is. Just trying to sort of keep everything locked down so that there's some other sort of some strange sort of stuff going on there. I agree with this. This is just, they should have moved on, and logic would have said move on and just because they could sort of they could. It's a dictatorship sort of thing. They could spin the narrative whatever way they want to. Do you mean? So I get that's where people say that they they want to sort of they don't want to lose face about COVID, but no one believes anything that they sort of put out anyway. So they can just put out rubbish figures and just say we've conquered it and move on. And if they wanted to open up, so there's something I think there's something going on there, but haven't really focused on it to sort of think of what it really is. But yeah, just they love putting out people have been saying fake GDP, fake this and that figures for the rest of since for the last 20 years. So they could easily sort of make out. But I saw that in Beijing, I think they had more COVID positive sort of higher than coming up to the top of where they've ever had more of any other sort of thing. So that's if they follow through this, they'll be locked down for a long time. Do you mean? So not much of the world opening up, and not good for stonks, really. Do you mean? So we'll see.
It really comes back to, I think, what Jeff Booth does a good job of surmising, is that it's so hard to have any kind of concrete information about anything, because there's misinformation in the money, right? And as a result of there being misinformation in the money itself, there's essentially no signal in anything, because like everything is a mess. You can't take information out of price signals anymore. You can't take information out of what's going on with interest rates, because it's all political. Like there's all these games that are being played that there's just no real grounding, right? Which I think, again, is another reason why BTC is so unique, is that it's one of the only things that's constant. It's just going to keep ticking along, churning out blocks, doing its thing, right? Unaffected by the world around it, unaffected by miners getting absolutely wrecked in terms of their financials, right? Hash rate's at all-time high, and mining rewards are at all-time low. So it kind of it's the only thing that gives you any semblance of like consistency, because everything else is just a joke or a scam, or it's kind of wild that there's just no information. Like that yield curve up there is horrifying, right? It's the thing has like 100% accuracy of predicting recessions, and if that's the case, it's basically telling you strap on your seatbelts and then go and buy a couple more seatbelts, because you're going to need all of them. So it's horrifying. But is that real? I don't know. Or is that, how much is the bond market pricing in? How much of it is just like, the Fed releasing reverse repo funds back into the market? Who knows? There's just no common sense to this whole thing. So it's really tough. It's really tricky. I just kind of look at the grand scheme of things, and I look at Bitcoin's current price action, and pretty much every metric that, if you believe that Bitcoin has even a semblance of a remote chance of mean reverting, it's a pure point of maximum opportunity. Absolutely everything is just a screaming buy, right? It's just all of it. So, of course there's going to be some chaos from now on, but I mean, I feel like most of the damage is done. I also feel like Bitcoin's going to provide the signal first, right? So whenever we do get some kind of rotation, whether it's a Fed pivot, whether it's major recession, whatever it is, I suspect that Bitcoin's going to be the first thing to respond. Difficult to know which direction it does respond, because if it goes into a recession, is that bullish for BTC? Because the probability of the Fed having to just juice the economy and reverse course starts to grow. It is interesting that there's like the added dynamic of Fed governors starting to dissent. So, if in that instance, and again, I'm still not quite there when it comes to the Tom Luongo type view, but if Jay Powell is essentially the man who's been tasked with executing on, 6% rate hikes for the purpose of burning down the global economy, if that's the case, the rest of the Fed governors seem to not be so in on it, based on their behaviors. Look, I don't really have any kind of scoop on this whole thing, but if that dissent does start to play out, and you start getting governors who are like, no, we need to soften, and then you get recession kicking in, and then their constituents kick in, and the political game of internal America then starts to become a factor in this whole thing. It's bloody hard to know what's going to happen. I don't know whether recession is good, bad, or indifferent for BTC. I have no gauge on it. All I can see is that if you believe Bitcoin's going to mean revert at some point in time, pretty much everything is signaling that it's just the most undervalued it's been in, I would argue, almost ever. So, it's pretty wild times, but, that's kind of the information set that I've got, and that's what I run off.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. As in all the scammery and fakery and stuff going on in the world, it just makes me double down on Bitcoin. It's the only thing you can trust. The only thing. I mean, and that just speaks for itself hugely. There is no CEO that anyone can get to and scam and change the dynamics or anything. Do you mean it's sort of like so? That alone, in a world of which we opening our eyes to at the moment is just huge, and it's like it's the only thing I want to be invested in. Do you mean the rest of the stuff's just as pumped? Do you mean, and trying to make some more money to make more BTC? Do you mean? But it just makes me double down on BTC, and I think very soon, I think we're coming towards the bottom. I think I'd love to see a V-shaped recovery, and I do think that'll get heavily bought up very fast. And and it wouldn't it be funny to see, after all these people just, these last couple of weeks, just thinking that Bitcoin's dead, or they're confusing crypto with Bitcoin, and how all this news about SBF, and it's been on the major channels all the time. Do you mean? So to see if we get back to 30K quite quickly, and keep chugging on, what will they make of all this? Do you mean it'll be quite something? It'll be quite interesting. Do you mean, as they thought it was probably, there's so many, all the anti-Bitcoiners and anti-crypto people of the big names have been calling this we told you so, and this is what we said is coming. Once they get back to 30 or 40K, I think they'll be in pure disbelief, and it'll be and I can see it coming very soon as well. Do you know?
Yeah, I'm getting the feeling that Max Payne is very soon going to be up. I have a feeling that's on our near term horizon. So, again, that doesn't mean go all in, but man, if you're not greedy down here, what on earth are you here for? It just feels like the period of maximum opportunity to me, and maximum pain. You see, and this is the other thing. Like, just one thing I've observed: Bitcoiners are relatively unaffected. A lot of people in crypto are minced. Their entire faith has been shaken. There's crypto influencers who are I'm tired, I'm done. Like I've had enough of this industry. Like people have just had enough of it, and I think that's just exactly what you want to see, right? Complete and total capitulation, and Bitcoiners just sitting there with their coins in their cold card, being like, righto, price is down, buy more, carry on. It's just a difference in culture, and I don't think anything else has that level of conviction. And that's what you want. That's what you want to see.
Actually,
Right, are there any other kind of? Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, with this MetaMask stuff that came out today, do you mean what would be your recommendations of people using for convenience? And because I must admit, I've only been using MetaMask really. Do you mean? So and now that's going to be killing. I think that's killed the golden goose. What they've done. Do you mean? So it's I'm sure everyone's going to be looking for a different desktop widget thing. So I don't know if you've got any suggestions.
Unless you run your own Ethereum node, you expect to be surveilled. That's the hard answer. Unless you are running your own node and pointing your MetaMask to your own node, it's surveillance coin.
Isn't there other things like Exodus, or I haven't really, must admit I've never used them, so haven't they got the same sort of
all use Infura. Pretty much everyone uses Infura. So anyone who uses Infura is which is pretty much all service providers, all dApps, unless you're pointing to your own Ethereum node, it's basically captured, in my view. That's literally why I made the call. I'm just like, I'm getting it. I can't hold this coin anymore. It just doesn't service the purpose.
Oh, I thought I was under the impression it was just sort of MetaMask, not sort of any of the interfaces with sort of, not.
It's everything that uses Infura, because MetaMask uses Infura. So basically,
Right.
Infura is logging addresses and IP addresses, and they support. They're the back end for everything. All the DeFi apps use it. All the wallets use it. Anything that's not pointing at your own node is essentially going to be surveilled from this point on.
Right. So if Stacks keeps going forward in the way it's going and wants to, if they can realize what they want to sort of do, isn't that even more good thing for Stacks in the future? Yeah.
It's the reason I still hold Stacks. What I want them to do is solve this crypto right problem, the Bitcoin right problem, which I think they are. They appear to be working on it, which is excellent. I'm not betting the farm on it, but I'm definitely not selling it at this point in time. So I'm in a position where, I'm pretty much BTC, Decred and Monero, and again, they're just kind of holdings I've had for some time. I did add a little bit to my Monero position, which just seems to be in vertical accumulation at this point, just a slow grind higher, and stacks, and that's pretty much it. That's the check portfolio, and don't really have too much interest in expanding beyond that.
Very good. I think they're pretty much my main holds as well. Do you mean? So apart from the Monero, I haven't got Monero actually, but Stacks, Decred, and Bitcoin is the main ones for me too. The rest is just speculation bets. Do you mean? So cool. Well, great stuff, man. If there's anything else, unless there's anything else, we'll be catching up with you on this Thanksgiving evening.
That's it. Good on you, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the weekend, the holiday break, and we'll see you next week.
Enjoy the celebrations, everyone. Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks, folks. Bye.
Bye.